This episode is sponsored by the Body Image Upgrade, a 30-day course helping you rebuild your relationship with your body. Tools, resources, and daily exercises to upgrade your body image. Learn more at bodyimageupgrade.com and enter the code podcast for 50% off. Welcome to Breaking Body Biases, a podcast about creating health and happiness without worrying about your weight. I'm Christine DeFilippis, certified fitness professional, studio owner, and creator of FitProEd, an online education platform for group fitness instructors. Join me every week as I interview fellow fitness pros, dietitians, wellness practitioners, and a wealth of others who are sharing their journey and helping to destroy diet culture. Welcome to episode 17 of the Breaking Body Biases podcast. This is Christine, your host, and I'm so grateful to have you here as part of this community, tuning in to each and every episode. The emails and texts and calls that I get as a result of this podcast reminds me that this is exactly where I need to be. This is the work that I need to be doing, interviewing these amazing, amazing people, sharing their stories, experiences, and strategies to live happier lives away from diet culture. So I can't thank you enough for tuning in. Thank you for reaching out if an episode connects with you, resonates with you, and for following the people that I'm interviewing. I know that many of our listeners have connected on a greater level with many of the guests on the show, and we're really building this amazing community. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. And if you have a specific question that you would like to ask of me or of any guests that we've already had on or potentially future guests, you can now ask that question right on our website. We have a great tab that says leave a message. It's either going to be on the bottom or the side, depending on if you are on a computer or a phone. Just click that leave a message tab, leave your message, and we will answer your question on a future episode. We have some amazing episodes coming up, some episodes that include many of our past guests answering a lot of the questions that kind of came from past episodes and kind of just center around one specific topic. So I'm excited to be sharing that with you and some more solo episodes with myself I have coming out. But I've met so many amazing people and we have so many amazing guests on the docket coming up for you soon. And today I have Dr. Maggie Landes on the show. I discovered Dr. Landes on Clubhouse. Then I followed her on Instagram. Make sure to follow her on Instagram. Her Instagram stories and reels and everything that she posts on Instagram is absolutely amazing. Dr. Landes is a diet culture disruptor and a change maker, a physician on a mission, podcast host, and most recently, she received her Master's of Public Health in Nutrition. And remember, she was already a physician, completed medical school, and she went back to school. We're going to talk about that in the episode. Maggie Landes is a board-certified physician, a pediatrician. She's a public health nutritionist, an anti-diet wellness expert. She created her signature getEATfluenced coaching program to help women who are exasperated with chronic dieting and be able to fix their food overwhelm, live a full and unrestricted life, pursuing personal passions without the distraction of rigid eating behavior. Boy, did I need her years ago. She is also the creator and host of the Eatfluencer Podcast, where she and her guests dig into mindset work required to construct a healthy, complete, and high-quality life, unlimited by the oppression of diet culture. So in this episode, we talk about a turning point in Maggie's life that made her question her own education and, like I mentioned, go back to school after already being a pediatrician. Weight stigma in healthcare, something that she knows a lot about, and how we raise our children in diet culture. We talk about so much more even than that. So let's get into this week's episode. So welcome, Dr. Maggie Landes, to the show. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Yes, thank you for having me, Christine. I'm thrilled to be here.
So you're a woman of many hats. You are a pediatrician. Now you work in nutrition because you got your
Right.
master's in public health, and you're also a mom. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that kind of overarch all those areas because I know you're an expert in those areas. But first, I want listeners to really get to know like how you ended up from, you know,
How I got here.
how you got here for
How
sure.
did you get here anyway,
Yeah.
right? Well, and you mean in the anti-diet space is what you mean by getting here, right?
True. Yes.
Yes. So, I have to say, and I'm in my mid 40s, just full disclosure. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s, diet culture with a capital D. All right. And participated in all the things. And to be honest, I went to medical school almost 20 years ago now. And I was a participant in that aspect of diet culture. I was doing what every typical doctor was telling patients in my personal life and my professional life. And what changed everything for me was I was actually diagnosed with cancer 2 months after my 40th birthday. And in having that experience, I did a lot of independent study about nutrition because I wanted to make sure I was, doing the best thing for my body and all this stuff. And I mean study, like articles, not scrolling Instagram.
Right. Right.
And I realized how little science there was to back up what I had been basically telling people for, 17 years. And I was horrified. And so I did what every good woman does is we blame ourselves. I thought, well, I'm sure I didn't keep up with it. I'm outdated. It has been a long time since I went to school. So I'm going to go back to graduate school and study nutrition. You can't go to medical school twice. So I was like, well, I'll just go back. And this is kind of the closest thing, right? So I go back to a master's program that's a public health nutrition program. And most of my colleagues in that program are going to go on and do their internship and become registered dietitians. I'm not doing that. I don't think I need to do that. But I realized, and so that was more recent. And I realized, oh no, this is the same. Like this is the same. These textbooks that are printed in the year 2017, 2018 have the same stuff in them as the ones that were printed in 1990 that I read in medical school. And I thought, this is wrong. Something is way amiss here. And so that's where I really started getting super interested in where this came from, because I realized that all these things that we, the general public, are accepting as fact are actual, like more of a cultural narrative than scientific fact. And I feel, especially if you're wearing the white coat, you're in the position of authority, giving out information as a provider, boy, you better like not be just spewing something slightly better than hearsay. They
Yeah.
don't go to the doctor to get the same thing that they're getting on the cover of, Vogue magazine. So I really took it up. So I didn't go through this whole transformation myself until about, 4 or 5 years ago when I was sick and then recovering from my illness. And it has been eye-opening because once you see how deeply embedded our entire culture, from top to bottom, we are painted with this very, broad brushstroke of diet culture, you can't unsee it. Once you come out of this like matrix,
Yeah.
it's what it's like. It's like emerging from, I don't even remember that movie very well, but you like emerge from this matrix. You cannot not see it anymore. And then you make the decision like, well, I can be bothered by this or I can do something about it. So I chose to do something about it because that's just the kind of person I am. But I think a lot of people don't even have an awareness of how deep we are in this. And it's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. It's like, I say this all the time. I say, it's like asking a fish what it's like to be underwater. They don't even there's no other way. They wouldn't even be able to describe it to you because they don't know any other way to see it. And I feel like that's where a lot of us are stuck. And unfortunately, the lot of us includes fitness professionals, health coaches, nutritionists, dietitians, doctors. We're not exempt from it. In fact, we may be even more susceptible to it being in that professional space. So I love talking about these things because I want to change the conversation and really disrupt the whole expectation of what it means to be healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you have a different vantage point, because if you're a pediatrician and you're dealing with children and your job is to care for their health,
Right.
how did your vision of that, doing that job, how did that shift when you realized like diet culture and you realized the
Right.
influence?
Well, let me tell you what, I have a health coaching business where I coach mostly middle-aged women. A lot of them are moms. And let me tell you how many of them tell me that the reason they diet is because a pediatrician told them, they remember their pediatrician when they were, I'm talking 6, 7, 8 years old, telling them they were overweight or telling them that they needed to eat less or something. And these women are in their 50s now. So we're talking, they have been dieting for 45 years because of a single comment that a pediatrician made to them when they were in the second grade. Now just stop and think about that. That's pretty normal. That's not the outlier. That's like the normal, and if they didn't get it from their pediatrician, they got it from their PE coach or their mother or their, whoever. And so I do like to address this issue with children, but the way that you are going to, the mom, in my opinion, is like the golden ticket.
Yeah.
Because they're, and I'm not excluding men. This is increasingly involving men, but generally the moms are the ones frequently driving the bus in terms of deciding how the family eats, how the family talks about food. They're the ones showing up at the pediatrician's office. It just is. And so it's really important that adult women repair this for their children and the children they're around. Even if you're not a mother, you got nieces, nephews, you're a teacher, you're a coach, you're a youth person at your church, whatever. Like if you are around children in any capacity, this is a super important message, because the way that you impact them in this regard about body image, eating, food, is very likely to stick with them for potentially decades. And I have to say, I started dieting when I was probably in my early mid teens, maybe 14 or 15 years old. And I didn't have a quote weight problem. I just did it because that's like what you did. It was like, well, heck, it was like 1989 and you just did that thing.
It was normal. That
It
was
was
the
like,
normal way.
Right. I don't even think we really called it dieting. We just like ate, fat-free frozen yogurt instead of ice cream because that's what you did. And we drank Slim Fast on the way to school because that's what you did. I wasn't like, I don't know. I didn't even think of it in that way until I didn't really think about, but it's diet culture. It's diet, the fact that was normative to participate in this shrinking ourselves and micromanaging our food. We're kind of all there. And I think it affects people of all ages, but most of us have been doing this for a very long time.
And I think you're right with the parents, like learning this, because I reflect back on my youth and like my mom would diet or look at herself in the mirror and, talk negatively about her body or the changes that happened after kids or after aging a little bit. And that stuck with me. Like that, my dance teacher, you mentioned, doctors, I've never had any, being that I was I want to say normal size kid. I was always on the smaller size height wise, but I never had a weight problem. I was a young dancer, but I never had any issues with the pediatricians, but I did experience some negativity in the dance world because I was short and didn't have long limbs and the pressure to have a dancer's body. But I look back at all those times and they learned it from someone. So I don't put any blame on my mom, but I look back, I'm like, I wonder what things she heard from her mom.
Well, yeah, honestly, in this country, in the United States, at least, and many other Western type cultures, this has been the normal kind of social expectation for probably 100 years. So this is your mom and your mom's mom and probably your mom's mom. And maybe beyond that, maybe not so much. But seriously, since like the 1920s. So we're talking about a very, very, very long time, but we don't even know where it started. Most of us don't even know where it started. It just is.
Nobody we want it changed.
Oh, we want it changed because everybody is fed up. Even the people who, this is the really ironic part, is the biggest massive behemoth companies in the diet industry don't even use the word diet in their marketing anymore because they know we don't like it. It's kind of like not fashionable to be dieting. Like it really was fashionable, 30 years ago, but now it's not cool anymore. It's not trending.
Yeah.
So they've like taken it out of and that's usually their tagline is like, it's not a diet. They're selling a diet. And I make this analogy. I've said this on my own podcast. I'm like, that is like, Toyota, you go to buy a car and they go, ma'am, this is not a car. This is a vehicle. And you're like, well, it sort of looks like a car. I already own one car. This looks like a car. It's got, ma'am, we don't call it a car here. This is a vehicle. That's just stupid. That just sounds stupid. And it's really what they're doing. But we believe it because we're looking for any answer. We're so frustrated with everything we've done. We are burnt out, completely spent, financially, emotionally, physically spent. We figure that the answer is somewhere, and we as the individual are the only one that hasn't found it. Like there's a perfect human diet and you haven't found it, Christine, and Maggie hasn't found it. And we're going to keep hunting for it. But unfortunately, that's a business model. That's not actually how biology works. That's not physiology. Like it's just them being dependent on you pursuing that because their business depends on it. So that's an important point. The piece with the kids, and it can be so simple. So I say this to a lot of moms and they're like, well, I don't ever tell my kids that they're fat or anything. And I'm like, okay, I get it. That's a pretty low hanging fruit to not obviously fat shame your children. But like, what happens when you're taking a selfie and you're like, oh, stand in front of me so that my stomach doesn't show? Okay. Just something as simple as that. Just a comment like that. A 5-6-year-old child, that means something to them. Okay. That means that mom's body's not acceptable, that mom doesn't want somebody to see her on, the internet or Facebook or wherever you're about to put the picture. And you don't think about that. Like people don't realize that comment, and it, I'm not saying your 5-year-old's going to get an eating disorder because you stood in the back of the picture. But what I'm saying is when they get that message 100 times a day from every direction, that leaves an impression. So you have to really be very careful with your language and your actions, because that impresses on the kids as much as your direct, like talking to them or talking about what they're doing. Talking about what you're doing is equally as important.
Yeah. All those subtle little things.
Like mom's doing all the cooking, but then mom doesn't eat the food because mom has like a little diet food box that she has to eat out of or something. Like, even if you don't explain why, that gives a young child the message that like, oh, I guess moms or women or grownups or whatever have to do something different because they can't eat like us, and we all do it. I'm not shaming any individual person. That's how we've been cultured to talk about food and talk about ourselves.
So what are some better tactics for creating an environment for your children, for those around you? And even if you don't have children, you may come across children, we're all in this world together. So what can we do to help change the narrative around this and change the conversation?
Right. Well, the two big things that you can do that you can start working on, I really like to leave people with like, okay, what can I do? Like they're listening to this podcast and they're like, yeah. And then what? What am I supposed to do? Okay. The first thing is talking about bodies, everybody's body, anybody's body. Just be done with it. It doesn't matter. Like, don't make the comments. In fact, don't make the comments about the people being thin, or don't tell your friend, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. You look great. Did you lose weight? That kind of stuff. Don't tell your daughter when she's trying on clothes at the dressing room, oh, you should get those pants. They make you look thinner or whatever. Like it's just not say, oh, I like those pants because the hemline is really nice, or that's a fun fabric or color or whatever. There's lots of things to say that don't have to do with your shape. So not making comments about large bodies is important, but when you make a lot of comments about how revered small bodies are, you're basically saying the same thing. You're emphasizing the same point. I know we fall into that because we think, oh, well, that's what they want to hear. That's like complimentary and nice. And yeah, but you don't know what you're reinforcing with the person that's hearing that. What they might be hearing is, wow, I wonder what they thought of me before, or wow, I might be severely restricting my food. I might have an eating disorder. I might be using drug. I mean, who knows what the problem is? And you're now sort of reinforcing that behavior because you're congratulating them. And people want to please other people. That's just a human condition. So as far as kids go, body conversation just off the table. Not big bodies, not small bodies, not weight gain, not weight loss, just nothing. Just there's no reason. There's a million things you can say that have nothing to do with that if you want to give somebody a compliment. The second thing is really trying as very best you can to neutralize food so that there's not this like massive emotional baggage with food. And these foods are good and these foods are bad and these foods are treats and these foods are junk. And like it's just food. I even recommend, and I know this sounds crazy, if you are a family who has dessert like after dinner, or you have a sweet with your meal, which is here nor there, you have it, you don't have it, you sometimes do, sometimes don't, whatever. But if you're going to have it at that particular evening, serve it with the dinner at the same time on the table at the same time. And so it's just food. It's the chicken breast and the vegetables and the rice and the brownie are all just foods. And you know what? And what the parents will say is the kids will eat the brownie first. Okay. Well, so what? I mean, like, so then it's not that big a deal. They'll eat something else or they won't, but it doesn't matter. But I promise you every day of the week, they're not going to eat the brownie and nothing else. So you kind of let them just judge. But the minute that you say, you have to finish that broccoli because we have brownies later, now you've made it this like standoff, like eating broccoli is punishment, getting a brownie is good. And this whole becomes very charged. And you just want it to be just food. Take this emotional impact off of the food. This is what happens in adults that binge eat, that overeat. When they tell me they have problems overeating a specific type of food, I say, well, how much do you restrict it? And they're always restricting it. They restrict it because they're afraid if they have it, they'll binge on it. But it's exactly the opposite. The reason you are overeating it is because you've restricted it. Yeah. So I know if you think that you can't, quote, control yourself around potato chips, the answer is to buy a bag of potato chips and put it in your pantry. And I know that sounds totally weird, but when it's not such a big deal, it's like, it's just not such a big deal. And then you're like, okay, I kind of want a few chips. Okay, great. And it's like, okay, so, have them, don't have them. We want to neutralize this. And this takes practice. This is not like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll do that. Let's start. Here we go. You really have to practice because most of us are not neutral about our language with food and our feelings about food. And there's always this sort of subtle narrative about what is better or best, or even when you use the word healthy food, I don't even like that term. And I know what you mean when you say that. Like, I know what you're saying. I get it. You're saying more produce, unprocessed proteins, and I get it, but healthy gives it a morality.
Yeah.
So you just have to start removing that. And I would encourage them to start anybody to start practice sort of neutralizing it. And you'll find it super interesting because this is how it is in life. Whatever you don't have, you're like laser focused on. I mean, the people that are single are like laser focused on having a relationship. The people who don't have a job are like laser focused on getting a job. Those of us that have a job, we just go to our job, or we have a partner or a spouse or whatever. I don't like think every day how I manage this relationship. I'm in it and I deal with it sort of, but it's not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That may be a bad analogy, but we overemphasize the things that we don't allow or don't have.
I agree with you on the chip scenario or whatever, insert any snack, because I definitely during my diet days and my heavily restricted days, I thought to myself, I can't have it in the house because then I won't be able to control it. So the best thing to do is to just not have it. But I really felt like it's all I ever wanted. Like when I took carbs out of my diet, I just wanted to eat a piece of
All
bread all the time. It's all I
right.
craved.
Okay, well, and let me tell you, let me just make this normal for you, because this is not you being this is where the whole willpower.
Willpower.
I wish you guys that
Yes.
are listening could see this, because I have
The air quotes.
my fingers are getting so tired from the air quotes, but this willpower, that you don't have willpower around carbs, so you can't have them. Okay, the human brain is smarter than you. Okay, it just is. My brain is smart, like it knows what to do more than I know what to do with it. So the brain is always looking for what it's missing. This is a primitive, like, reflex, instinctual response, because that is how our ancestors survived. They had to find what they didn't have, because if they didn't have it, they would die. And they had to have motivation, like they had to get that, sort of energy, sympathetic nervous system response to go out and find it, because their life depended on it. And they had to risk their life to go find food. You and I, we don't have to, like, risk our life to go get a bag of potato chips, but that programming is still there. So the brain likes consistency. It doesn't like scarcity. It doesn't like unpredictability. And so it doesn't know the difference between you not having, I'm just going to use chips because we said that, you not having chips in your house versus the fact that all the chips are gone off the surface of the earth. It doesn't know the difference. So it's looking for them, essentially, and it takes over your rational brain, so that now your rational brain, which could have the potential to just have different foods and have good variety and, be curious and investigative about this, it becomes extremely one-sided. And see, now the thing is that I bet you if, whatever you restrict, you put back in. What I noticed when I went through this myself, whatever I was restricting and, like, not allowing ever, like I wouldn't buy candy. Like, I never purchased candy. Okay. I mean, I sometimes would have it if it was, like, given to me as a gift or something, but I never ever bought a bag of candy at the grocery store. Well, then now I can buy candy and it's, like, left over so long that it's like you get rid of it because it's, like, not even good anymore. Like, the chocolate gets that, like, white waxy stuff on it, because it's that unexciting to me, because anytime I want to have it, I can have it, that I actually don't want it.
Absolutely.
That's weird, right? That's so
it is
weird.
So weird.
It doesn't make sense to say that out loud. And you're like, this lady is crazy, but it's true.
It's 100% true. I mean, I look at people that get all bent out of shape around Halloween. They're like, I've got to get rid of this candy. I said, why? If I got rid of it, I'd probably want it, but I just let it sit there. And I actually, funnily enough, talking about potato chips a minute ago, I have potato chips in my house. If I didn't have them in my house, I didn't eat any potato chips last night because they're in my house. They were there. They're available. I didn't crave them. I didn't want them.
Yeah. This is real psychology. This is not just some, like, hack, that I'm, like, telling you to fix this problem. This is really how the brain works. If stuff is available in the environment, that is secure, and you don't get, like, kind of worked up about it. So yeah,
it's very freeing to do that, because I feel like I almost felt like an adult for the first time. When you're a child and you don't have the things that you want because, mommy and daddy, they're like, nope, you can't have that because you need to do this first.
You can't be trusted. Yeah.
Right. So I felt like I lived my youth, my 20s and 30s, in that kind of mentality where I still needed to be parented according to my diet. And when I finally just said, I can have whatever I want, whenever I want, I'm an adult, it was so freeing.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's really this kind of big brother thing. Like, we have had diet culture bossing us around and supervising us and telling us what to do. And we've said, yes, we've basically said, okay, this is where I'm going to be allegiant and loyal. And it's just not necessary. And honestly, the more you learn about why they're telling you these things and you realize it's actually not based in science, if you're like a nerd like me and you're looking for evidence, I mean, the evidence is not there to support most of the things they're promoting, then you're like, well, I'm not going to listen to that. That's like, I mean, forget that. And then you make your own decisions. And it really is to the level of you. This is like you become your own, as we say, like the N=1 experiment. And so there's no universal answer to any what should I eat question. That's why I don't, with my clients, I don't make meal plans and stuff, because I don't want to tell you what to eat, because then I'm just like a new diet. I'm going to tell you how you make the decision what to eat, and then you make the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's fun. It becomes way more fun. Frankly, it just becomes more fun when you look at this with a open-mindedness, and it's fun. It's interesting. You have a curiosity. You're sort of like experimenting and learning rather than punishing, judging, all the things. And it's the same thing with fitness. I know you mostly are talking about the fitness and the movement and stuff. It's the same thing. You want to do that because your body's capable of it and you like it, and it has other advantages and makes you feel good, not because somebody told you have to hold a plank for 3 minutes, like, right?
Yes. That is not fun.
No, not fun. Not fun. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about weight stigma, because you've spent most of your career working in healthcare, and it's a topic that I think we obviously there's a lot of work to be done in this area. So I wanted to get your perspective on the current state of healthcare and weight stigma, and what you think changes are possible and what people can do.
Well, it's a major problem. The weight stigma and anti-fat bias in healthcare is a problem. And the problem is it's not sort of nice to an individual person, but the problem on a big picture scale is it keeps people from accessing care at all, period. That's the really sort of public health problem, is that if you're in a large body, you go to the doctor's office, have a terrible weight stigmatized experience, and you never go back for any reason. Well, that's how you end up with people that, these women that have never had a mammogram or never had their blood pressure checked or something. And then they die of these diseases. And then we blame them. We say, oh, well, that's because they're fat. Like, you see how that works? It actually works in reverse, where it's totally biased. And I want to make clear that I'm not throwing like doctors under the bus. Okay. I'm a doctor. The problem is our education is biased in a diet culture lens for a lot of reasons, which we won't get into the details of. We are humans, just influenced by the same cultural influences as everybody else. We look at the same internet, shop at the same stores, everything. You put us in a system, a healthcare system, where this is very challenging to address. So even if you have a doctor who has learned about these things, who has sort of changed their way of thinking, and they're motivated to change their patients, you give them 7 minutes in the office. I mean, you and I have already been talking way longer than that. And there's just, the system is not set up to facilitate this kind of conversation in a clinical setting. It's just not designed that way. I mean, that would be great if we could fix that somehow. So the whole system, and if you just think about it, I want everybody to think about when they went to the doctor last time, okay? From the waiting room, just simple stuff like, is there seating that's appropriate for people in large bodies? Are there some chairs that don't have arms on them so they can sit comfortably while they're waiting? Are they standing? I mean, that's easy, right? And you go to the doctor, you get weighed before you even go to the room. Like, it's in the hallway. They haven't even hardly seen the whites of your eyes, and they're already throwing you on the scale. So then that becomes the center point of the entire experience. It doesn't even matter if you're there for back pain, acne, anxiety, diarrhea, whatever your complaint is that you're at the doctor. As soon as the scale comes into the picture, that is the backbone of everything. So that colors the assessment you get, that colors the conversation that happens, that colors the treatment plan that's established. I mean, it's just so pervasive. It's a big, big, big problem. And here's the other problem. So we can talk about that. That's the, I think, more obvious problem. And people in large bodies will validate this till next Tuesday. I mean, this just happens. But think about this. Okay. There are lots and lots of people in skinny, quote, straight size, normal BMI bodies who have lots of health problems, who are like wrecked on the inside, who are metabolically unhealthy, who have eating disorders, who have addictions, who have whatever other problem. And they get like a hall pass because they're, quote, normal, and their weight gets punched into the computer and it comes up in the green zone, and they're, nobody mentions one thing about it. Nobody asks them how they're eating. Nobody asks them what they do for movement, or nobody even asks. So we're doing a disservice to everybody. Frankly, we're doing a disservice to everybody by not making the conversation about health and health promoting behaviors. Really, we should be having the conversation about, what are you eating? What do you have access to? Do you have money to buy groceries? Where are you buying your groceries? Are you going outside? Are you able to walk around your neighborhood? Is your neighborhood safe for this? Do you have opportunities to play any sports or do this or blah? I mean, those are the questions we should be asking of everybody, no matter what size or shape they are when they walk in, and not picking and choosing who we have the conversation with based on whether they're, fat or skinny. Because we're missing everybody. And there's no doctor wants to do that. And trust me, we're not doing this maliciously. They're not trying to harm patients, but it's causing a lot of problems with people it's precious to access healthcare. Healthcare is a privilege in this country. And so if you have the opportunity to be in a healthcare setting, whether you're the provider or the patient, like, that is a exquisite and precious interaction that lasts about 7.5 minutes. And so we need to take every opportunity to milk that for what it's worth in true health promotion and disease prevention and prevention of death. That is what we are trying to do at the end of the day, and take all the other conversation that's social and cultural influenced with this diet culture, candy coating, just take it out. I mean, I have like a super revolutionary idea. This is crazy, but I think that patients should not, I'm talking adult patients should not be weighed at the doctor's office unless there's a medical indication. So there are a few things where you legitimately need to be weighed. Like if you're getting chemotherapy, you need to be weighed. If you're going to get general anesthesia, but I'm telling you, the number is like, I don't know, I can think of probably 4 or 5 conditions. That's it. It does not include, I have a headache, I have anxiety, I have acne. It doesn't include any of those people. So I think, of course, we can't kind of stop this runaway freight train once it's on the tracks. So let's just take it off the table altogether. What happened if you walked into the doctor's office and just went and sat in the room and had a conversation about your fill in the blank chief complaint, and nobody told you needed to lose weight? Nobody told you that your body was the reason that you have this problem. Like, what if you actually got some other information and left and were motivated to do a few things and come back and recheck in with the doctor to see if your problem got better? That's healthcare. And that's how the system is supposed to work. And I feel like the scale is a major distraction from the goal of the whole interaction. Now children are a little different. There are some reasons children need to be weighed, etc. But I still would put a big asterisk behind that and say there's a lot of ways to work around that without making it a weight stigmatizing experience.
Yeah. And I think too, when they weigh you, when you go into the doctor, just having my own flashbacks, you immediately get your blood pressure taken after you hopped on the scale. So the anxiety that you may feel or the stress from getting on the scale, I've had instances where my weight has fluctuated and then I have anxiety around it. And then my blood pressure's on the higher scale.
Sure. And now we got to spend the little 7 minutes I have with you talking about why is your blood pressure high? And you got to explain, well, I just got on the scale and I'm kind of anxious. And can you take it again? And can we do it? Now we've had a totally unproductive visit when the whole thing could have just stopped and just not happened at all. Yeah. There's a pretty simple solution, but it's so countercultural to where we are now that's why I'm on fire about this.
Yeah.
Because it's got to change. I want a different experience when I go to the doctor. I want my, 13-year-old daughter to have a different experience when she goes to the doctor. But it's not just the doctors. It's the system. It's the education. It's the way it's set up. It's going to take everybody to kind of fix this because it's not just one singular, source.
Right. And it's so great that, like you had mentioned, it's going to take a lot of work from a lot of people like yourself that work in healthcare, work in this industry, are leading the way in helping to change the narrative, because it's going to take a lot of people. You also have a podcast and you speak on lots of different, like some of the topics that we discussed here. I'm going to put Maggie's information in the show notes so you can go listen to her podcast. You also have, can you tell our listeners about the program? Because you have a specific program that you work with.
Yeah, I
women.
have, right, exactly. So I have a kind of signature group coaching program. I like the group aspect. I do take a few individual clients, but I think the community building aspect of having these conversations is really validating. I also do some consulting work for healthcare professionals. That could be fitness professionals, nutritionists, doctors, psychologists, whoever, who want to try to clarify their own content to make sure that they're delivering an inclusive product, a sort of inclusive, weight inclusive, health at every size product to their own clients. Yeah, the fact that y'all are even listening to this podcast makes me so thrilled because I feel like every ear that hears this message that most people have never even heard this. And the idea to even hear this conversation, decide that you want to think a little bit differently, that you're willing to have this conversation with one other person, that's how this is going to happen. If you happen to have a podcast, you happen to have a giant platform, that's fantastic. But everybody has a sphere of influence. Like I said, the way you talk to the people in your own home, the way you approach food and the conversation about eating and your body in front of your own family members changes the conversation for all of us. And so I'm happy to help anybody kind of meet them where they're at and take them the next step. Because it's a process. I don't be under the delusion that, there's some magic book and you read it and now you're like an intuitive eater and everything's fine with the world and there's butterflies and unicorns and stuff. It takes deliberate effort, but the more you do it, like anything else, that becomes the default condition and you don't have to work so hard against your programming.
Yeah, it becomes your more normal to be out of diet culture.
Right. And then you can't even, like I said, you can't even imagine how great it is to be free from, and it's not giving up. I mean, it's really because, well, I feel like I'm giving up what? Giving up dieting? Well, yeah, you are going to be giving up dieting, but guess what? You're going to gain, your health, your mental health, your social connection, your identity, your body image, like all these things. And boy, that's worth it to me.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it was wonderful speaking with you today. I'm going to ask you a few little short questions we love to ask all of our guests because we here at PopFit Studio, we love to move and we do it in a joyful way. So we love hearing what their favorite way to move their body is.
Well, you know what? I've gotten into a little bit. I kind of like dancing. I know you said you're a dancer. My daughter she's a teenager and she's in some competitive dance things. And I'll have her like teach me some of the stuff. Now, of course, I don't have nearly the agility and flexibility and skill that she and her friends do. But to me, dancing is really a fun way that doesn't seem like work when you're doing it as much as other forms of movement to me. And then there's fun music, when you have the music and stuff like that. So I've never done Zumba. You know what? I've never done Zumba, but it's crossed my mind recently that might be like the sweet spot between kind of dancing and aerobic exercise. And I'm thinking I might try that. So check back with me later and maybe I'll tell you next time. I'll tell you it'll be Zumba.
You're going to be a professional dancer in the next decade, right? You keep
that shifting. Is unlikely.
You keep shifting your careers and right. I see professional dancer.
Yes. I do not see that, but thank you for the vote of confidence.
All right. So let's talk about self-care. What's your favorite way to practice some self-care?
Well, I like taking baths, even though I have a totally terrible, undersized, small, crappy builder grade bathtub. I just like hot water and quiet. Sometimes I will read, but most of the time I truly just sit there and stare into space.
Yeah.
And just sort of process what's gone on that day, what I'm not super deep, like meditative, but just, kind of reflecting. And that's it. And then the water gets cold and then I get out because it's, but I do like doing that. I'm also a big reader. So I like reading. That kind of distracts my mind from being busy brained all the time.
Yeah. Wonderful ways to practice self-care.
Yeah.
And if there are any music or artists or songs that are inspiring you right now?
Right now, well, what I've got on my playlist right now, so my daughter's dance recital's in 2 weeks. So we've got Lady Gaga, Stupid Love is at the top of the playlist. Now, you know what? I listen to a lot of different stuff. My radio in my car is actually a Christian Sirius XM station, but that's not exclusively what I listen to. I'm from, like I said, I'm from the 80s and 90s. So we frequently are 90s on 9 or 80s on 8. It's just, I think, and of course, those are now classics.
Yeah, the oldies.
See, to me, classics are like from the 60s, but no, this is like my, oh my gosh. Yeah, I read a headline the other day. It said something about they were having a throwback playlist and it had Ariana Grande on it. And I thought, Ariana Grande? Throwback to what? Like 2 years ago or something? Like, no.
Well, I knew I hit a point when my high school prom song was on the oldies radio station. Yeah, and I'm like, oh no.
I know. What my kids say? My kids say, you were born in the 1900s. And when you say it like that,
it sounds so old.
It sounds like what I picture is like Little House on the Prairie,
Yeah.
But really, yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I'm sure our parents must have felt the same way. I think we all just go through that phase where here's what I say, getting older, it's better than the option, right?
True.
I mean, what's the alternative? Not to get older and be dead. I'd rather just get older.
Yeah. A lot of fun things come with getting older.
Yes.
And then is there anything in the past year? I don't know if you worked more or less, because I know you started a podcast when, COVID hit, and I don't know if you ended up having a whole lot of time to, binge watch anything, but we always like to find out if there's something that you found in the past year binge-worthy that you like to share.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't watch it the first time around, but The Big Bang Theory.
Oh yeah.
I never watched it when it was like in, normal run. And I guess I was just busy. I don't know why. I'm not a huge TV watcher, but my husband said, I think you would like this show. And I watched a few episodes, was hooked. And now we are, up to our eyeballs, because this had 12 seasons or something. So this is not an insignificant amount of episodes to get over, but yeah, totally quirky. And the science part is fun. And the acting is very good, in my opinion, and for a comedy. And yeah, so I'm finally joining The Big Bang Theory. 15 years late to the party, but
I'm with you there. I'm with you there because they rerun a lot of that show on lots of different channels now. And I didn't watch it the first time around either. And I actually found it to be like, I don't want to watch that. But if it would be on and I didn't change the channel, I find myself laughing. I'm like, oh, this show is actually good.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm with you there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And we'll put your information in the show notes so people can connect with you and follow you on social media. And we'll build this army of people to help change the narrative. So Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks, Christine.
That was my interview with Dr. Maggie Landes. If you enjoyed the episode, take a minute, rate and review the show. It helps other people learn about our show and ultimately grow our community. And our mission here is to amplify voices, destroying diet culture so that we can help more people and grow our community. If you have a suggestion for a future guest, make sure to send them over to our website. That's also a place that you can learn more about Dr. Landes and all of our guests. Each of our guests has their own blog page right on our website. Go to breakingbodybiases.com to learn more. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll have a brand new episode for you next week.